Hello everyone, are you ready for a journey through time? Today, we won't be heading to a battlefield or a bustling medieval market. We'll be delving deep into the heart of a medieval castle, cold and silent. Imagine dusk has fallen, and you creak open a wooden gate into a vast courtyard. Here and there, torchlight dances, and the wind whistles through arrow slits. As your feet pad across the stone, shadows dance on the walls. You get the feeling this place is as cold as ice. So, before we get settled, take a moment to admire this content and subscribe. While you're at it, write your current location and local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights. Maybe put on a fan for some light white noise. Let's embark on this journey together. You're living in a castle now. Congratulations. You're technically nobility. Don't celebrate too much, though, because you're about to experience life inside a giant stone refrigerator. These castles weren't fancy, warm palaces. They were fortresses designed for defense, not for comfort. The walls are thick, several feet of stone, great for fending off attacks. They are not so great, however, for fending off the cold. There is no insulation, no central heating, just stone, damp air, and gloomy mornings. If you're lucky, there's a fireplace in your room, and if you're very lucky, it actually works. But even then, most of the heat vanishes right up the chimney. It takes your hopes of a warm night along with it. Your bed is a wooden frame. The mattress is straw stuffed into linen. The sheets, if you're rich, are probably wool, and if you're very rich, maybe linen and wool. Either way, they're scratchy and don't hold heat. Your breath clouds in the air even when you are inside the room. You wear layers of clothing, a tunic, a jerkin, a cloak, and sometimes another cloak over that. You're basically a walking bundle of textiles. And if you get up in the middle of the night, good luck. The stone floor is an icy betrayal underfoot, and there's no such thing as slippers. But, hey, at least you're protected from the wind. Right, sort of. Castles are riddled with arrow slits and ill-fitting doors. Drafts swirl like ghosts in the corridors. You try to light a candle, and it extinguishes from the breeze, sneak in under the rafters, and the dampness. Those thick stone walls love to hold on to moisture. Condensation creeps, and mold forms in the corners. The chill you feel isn't just from the air, but from the walls themselves. They are leeching the warmth from your body like a medieval vampire. Historians debate if nobles truly suffered as much as their poorer counterparts, or if they just owned enough tapestries and feather bedding to ward off the worst of it. But even the best appointed rooms were cold by our modern standards. And the tapestries. Oh yes, they were not just for decoration. They're essentially medieval insulation. You hang heavy woven cloth on your walls, not for style, but to keep the draft off your spine. Sometimes people would sleep in groups, not just for warmth, but also to save on firewood. Keeping fires stoked in multiple rooms all night wasn't practical. So, your family, your servants, and your distant cousin visiting for the winter might all be snoring near you. It's a shivering slumber party. There's even evidence that noble families would drag their beds into the Great Hall during winter. They would huddle around the one fireplace, large enough to make a real difference. Privacy was a summer luxury. In winter, it was all about survival. Here's a fun side note. The higher up in the tower your room was, the colder it generally was. You'd think going up means warmth. Right, not here. Hot air might rise, but in a drafty spiral staircase with no insulation, it's different. Your top room just meant more exposure to wind and less access to the fireplaces downstairs. So, yes, you live in a castle, but no, it is not glamorous. You're constantly cold, your fingers are stiff, and your cloak smells faintly of damp wool. Even your nose is considering resigning from its duties. You go to bed wearing most of your day clothes, hoping the dog will sleep at your feet again for warmth. You stare at the ceiling, listening to the wind hum through gaps in the drapes. You wonder, maybe peasant life wasn't so bad after all. You wake up needing to relieve yourself. It's still dark outside. You know exactly what awaits. A chilling journey across icy stone floors. It is an undignified trip to one of the least exciting features of your noble estate. The privy, yes, the medieval toilet, or rather, the hole in the wall you wish was one. Forget flushing toilets. There is no seat, no privacy, no scented candles or soft lighting. You make your way to a narrow stone cubicle, often built right into the castle wall. It juts out like a tiny, waste-expelling balcony. If you're lucky, it's enclosed. If not, you're doing your business by moonlight. The wind whispers through your exposed bits. The hole leads somewhere, usually a vertical shaft that drops directly into the moat, or sometimes it leads to a special night soil collection area. Someone, probably named Jeff, has to clean that out weekly. Let's talk about the smell. That shaft doesn't necessarily come with a lid. Everything you deposited yesterday is still very much resonating. Some privies had tiny vents to aerate the place, but they just invited in more cold. They increased the draft-to-air ratio, and also spiders. Don't think about it too much. If you weren't within convenient distance of a privy, you got a chamber pot. It's just a ceramic pot where you do your business and leave it under the bed. Your servant might empty it in the morning, or not, depending on how much they like you. And guess what? Some nobles even use curtains to designate a bathroom corner in the bed. So you're lying there, and across the room, someone lifts a curtain to do their business. Sleep well, and the contents of that moat your privy empties into, just outside your window. It's not just water. It's a swirling soup of effluent, rain, dead rats, and sometimes a lost shoe. So much for romantic strolls by moonlit waters. Historians still debate whether these sanitation systems were ingenious for their time or just a failure. Some castles experimented with rudimentary flushing systems using buckets of water, but they were rare and often broke down. For the castle staff, the privy was more than just a bathroom. It was a duty. Servants had to maintain these areas and clear blockages. Sometimes they would be hanging on ropes to clean out. So, if you ever wondered why your servant looked grumpy at breakfast, now you know. And speaking of breakfast, you might want to skip it after a night like that. Back to bed, you try to get warm again, pondering the humble, odorous truth of it all. In a place built for grandeur and defense, personal hygiene and comfort came a distant second. The logistics of relieving yourself in a castle are so disheartening. Some people even used padded garments called shoes to delay the need. Yes, medieval adult diapers were sort of a thing. Not officially, of course, but let's just say those layers of clothing had possibilities. Here's a weird little note. Some privies were built with chutes positioned directly over high castle walls. This served as an early warning system for invaders trying to scale them. Imagine being a soldier carrying a ladder and looking up to see that surprise. As you drift back to sleep, shivering, you can't help but envy the foxes outside. At least they get to go in peace. Morning arrives, not with birdsong, but a shifting, grey cold. You hear the distant groan of someone trying to start a fire. Your stomach rumbles. It's time to eat, or rather, endure whatever the kitchen has conjured. Castle food. It's a strange stew. Literally, unless it's a feast day, you're probably eating a portage that's been simmering since Tuesday. The standard menu is portage, a vaguely porridge-like, lumpy concoction. It is made from whatever could be thrown into one pot: oats, onions, cabbage, parsnips, and occasionally a mysterious meat that could be pigeon, rabbit, or something else. It's hot, certainly, but is it comforting? Only if you grew up licking limestone. There's a fire in the great hall, but it doesn't make the food taste better. Everything is overcooked, boiled until recognizable ingredients surrender. Texture is not a concept in medieval cuisine. Everything is a beige mush, and spices. Now we're talking currency. Spices like pepper, cinnamon, and cloves were imported from faraway lands and cost a fortune. So, unless you're hosting a visiting duke, your meal will be shockingly bland. Still, food had its moments. If you were important enough, you might get a piece of roasted meat. It would be delivered by a sweating kitchen boy who had been turning the spit since dawn. But even the meat could be questionable. Refrigeration, please. You'd better hope someone salted it well. Otherwise, today's roast might be yesterday's regret. Some castles stored fish in barrels of brine or fermented sauces. These sauces were so potent they could stun a small pig. Fish sauce, especially garum-like concoctions, were a staple in elite kitchens. Historians debate if this was due to flavor preference or just medieval masochism. As for table manners, they are a little more advanced than you might expect. People eat with their hands, but they wash them before meals. Spoons are common. Forks were just starting to appear among the upper classes. They were still considered foreign and a bit suspicious. One writer even accused fork users of excessive vanity. If you're lucky, it's fresh and soft. Let's talk about bread. Most of the time, it's coarse, heavy, and full of leftover grain husks. Low-quality bread could be so solid you could use it as a dough. In fact, the bottom layer of bread, called the trencher, wasn't meant to be eaten. It was used as a plate to soak up stew juices. Medieval recycling. Then it was often tossed to dogs or given to the poor. Sometimes the meal included watered-down wine or ale. Water isn't necessarily the preferred drink. It's often too risky. So everyone's slightly tipsy, including the children, especially the children. You finish your meal, you're full, but not necessarily satisfied. It's the kind of full where your tongue is bewildered and your stomach suspicious. Still, food is food, and you won't complain too loudly. You don't want to be reassigned to moat cleaning duty again. There is one bright spot. Feast days, when a noble hosts a banquet, the food transforms. Pies with elaborate crusts, roasted birds displayed as if in flight. There are sugar sculptures, even jellies, molded into tiny castles within the castle. It's a theater of abundance, but for now, your breakfast is oatmeal again. Perhaps one shriveled date tossed in for drama. And don't forget, you're eating all of this in a cold stone room. No cushions, long wooden tables, no placemats, no napkins, just your sleeve or your neighbor's dignity. You get up from the table, cheeks numb, still tasting the onion. You wonder what's for lunch, and then immediately regret asking. You leave the hall hoping to find a quiet spot to digest your grey breakfast. But there's no such thing as solitude in a medieval castle, and certainly no such thing as privacy. While you might be a noble, you're not a noble alone. You're a member of a household. That means you are constantly surrounded by servants, by family, and by people who have never heard of the term personal space. Your bedchamber isn't just yours. Sure, it might have your name on the door, if doors had names. But your lady's maid sleeps on a straw mat by the fire. Your valet has a small cot in the corner, and there's a footman assigned to quietly stand guard nearby. Good luck sleeping through this symphony of snores, mumbles, and the occasional grumbled prayer. Remember, this isn't just about sleeping arrangements. This is your daily reality. You get dressed with assistance. You bathe. If you bathe at all with assistance, you talk, and there's likely someone lurking nearby, pretending not to listen. But they are soaking in every detail for castle gossip material. And no, there's no lock on your door. Privacy was a largely foreign concept. Medieval life was public, communal, and often very, very loud. You weren't expected to be alone. If you were, people assumed something was wrong. Even letters weren't private. Many were dictated aloud or read out publicly. Your thoughts, your feelings, even your private love poems, were potential group entertainment. Your diary is a luxury of centuries later. Historians debate whether nobles resented this lack of space, or simply accepted it as part of their status. Some suggest privacy was more associated with shame or suspicion rather than relaxation. After all, what were you hiding? Still, you would kill for one tiny moment alone, and it only gets worse at night. Sleeping next to other people isn't just awkward, it's hazardous. Lice, fleas, and diseases spread like wildfire. Gossip. If your neighbor starts coughing, you start planning your will. The Black Death didn't care how noble your lineage was. Beds were often shared, even among people who weren't romantically involved. It wasn't scandalous, it was practical. A large, draped bed was a status symbol, yes, but it was also insulation. 2 bodies trap more heat than one. This is science, this is survival, this is huddle or suffer. It's not just servants crammed into rooms like medieval visiting nobles, extended family members, even random diplomats might be given lodging in your room. The word guest was a very polite and very dangerous word. You want to bathe alone? No chance. If you're lucky enough to get a tub, it's a wooden barrel dragged into your room. It's filled with buckets of hot water. Then someone helps you wash. Then someone else helps you dry, and then they all leave and talk about the mole on your back. Fun fact, some people avoided bathing entirely because it was considered risky. They believed warm water opened up pores to disease or worse, improper temptations. Better to stay dirty and sealed up. They smelled of despair, but hey, at least they didn't catch a cold. At this point, you've probably stopped changing your clothes daily. That's normal. Most people had only a few outfits. The outer layers were worn repeatedly without washing. The linen undergarments bore the brunt of the sweat. If you're a servant, weeks might pass without a full change of clothes. So, you retreat to your private chamber, where a candle boy lights a taper. Your lady's maid mends your stockings. Someone knocks to ask if they can store some salted fish in your window nook. No one knocks softly. No one leaves quickly. No one seems to realize that you might, just might, want to be alone for 5 minutes. You want to listen to the wind and wonder if the life of a goose might be less stressful. You curl up on your straw mattress, half surrounded by company you didn't invite. You practice the only privacy allowed, pretending to be asleep. You finally drift off to sleep, only to be woken by a distinct and undeniable sensation. Something smells wrong. Not as someone forgot to tempt the chamber pot wrong, but more like the ceiling is made of smoke. Because, here's the thing. Fire, your only source of heat and light, is also the single greatest threat. Medieval castles burned down often, and spectacularly. It's ironic, you live in a place built entirely of stone, yet you're constantly surrounded by fire hazards. Beams, floors, staircases, furniture, all wood. Tapestries are flammable. Feather-stuffed beds are flammable. Curtains, you guessed it. One stray ember, one toppled torch, one sleepy servant messing with a candle could be disastrous. Your entire upper floor can go up in a fiery blaze. Let's not forget the candles everywhere, made of tallow, animal fat. They burn with a smell somewhere between burnt pork and disappointment. They drip, they wobble, they fall over if you sneeze too hard, You move through the castle as carefully as possible. You hope no one is testing fate with a torch in one hand and a fur-lined hood in the other. But fire safety isn't a thing yet. No smoke detectors, no fire drills. There is just lots of praying and exposed flames. At night, some fires are banked with ash to keep them smoldering until morning. This keeps rooms from getting utterly frigid, but it exposes you to the risk of carbon monoxide poisoning. Sweet dreams! Historians still debate whether medieval castle fires were more common in kitchens or in sleeping chambers. Both had their hazards. Kitchens had enormous open hearths. They had iron spits and cauldrons and enough grease to deep fry a night. Bedrooms had fireplaces that weren't always properly vented. They often burned long after everyone was asleep. And let's not forget arson, because nothing says medieval politics like setting your rival's tower ablaze. Whether it was during warfare, a peasant rebellion, or a personal vendetta, fire was often the preferred method of vengeance. Some castles eventually got smarter. They used stone vaulting to separate floors. They introduced fire breaks, like stone walls between major rooms. But that came later. Your castle is still very much in a wooden tapestry aesthetic. You might think you're safe during the day, but the kitchens never stop. Fires burn from dawn till well past supper. Servants carry firewood up narrow staircases. Sparks fly onto the strassed floor mats. Everything smells of smoke and vague panic. Oh, and those straw mats are rarely cleaned, accumulating layers over weeks, even months. Dropped food, fallen hair, bone shards, lice, fleas. It's like walking on tinder that wants to ignite. Sometimes a noble would hire a strewing boy to freshen things up. New herbs and rushes were thrown down to mask the smell, but unless they also threw down buckets of water, it was still a fire hazard. There's also the issue of light. If you think fire is scary during the day, try navigating pitch-black corridors. You carry a candle. Maybe a lantern, your hand shakes, wax drips, shadows jump. You swear the very stone creaks. At one point, you consider just going without light. Maybe you'll feel your way in the dark like a blind mole and hope for the best. But then you trip over a sleeping servant under the stairs. Now you're both bruised, confused, and debating if the lump on your shin is cursed. In the end, you accept the eternal medieval truth. You need fire, and fire might kill you. So, you sit by the hearth, warming your hands while watching the sparks. You wonder if tonight is the night the chimney decides to erupt. Even when you're surrounded by stone, protected by ramparts and armed guards, your greatest threat might just be the candle on your bedside table. You might think being a noble in a castle means excitement, drama, and perhaps dragon slaying. But most days, you're just bored. Deep soul-chilling boredom. You've walked the ramparts 6 times this morning, and the view hasn't changed. The hills are still grey, the moat is still muddy. Entertainment is limited. No TV, no phone, no Wi-Fi for endless scrolling. Your best bet is embroidery, which is less about creativity and more about stabbing a piece of cloth. If you're a man, you might carve wood, or pace, or stare at a chessboard for so long. You might read, if you can read. Literacy in this era isn't a given. Even among nobles, it's not a sure thing. And books are rare, handwritten, heavily illuminated, expensive, and often in Latin. So, you talk a lot. Gossip is currency. And everyone is a broker. Who fell off their horse? Who flirted with the stable boy? Who slipped on the kitchen stairs? You learn not just what happened, but who witnessed it and how drunk they were. If you're lucky, a wandering minstrel will sing ballads of heroic deeds or tragic love. You sit, nodding along, wondering if this is the 5th or 6th version of the same duel. Sometimes you go hawking. Sounds glamorous, right? Mostly it's standing around in the cold, wearing a thick glove. You wait while a bird decides if it likes you today. If not, you've lost a hawk and your dignity. If you're lucky, it comes back with a rat. There are games, board games like Nine Men's, Maurice, or Fox and Geese. They're slow, strategic, and make chess look like speed dating. Dice exist, certainly, but gambling is frowned upon, especially if you keep losing to your aunt. Dancing is also an option at banquets or gatherings. But without modern hygiene or deodorants, it's more about overcoming smells than rhythms. You avoid your partner and the scent of last week's venison. Historians debate whether the monotony of castle life caused long-term psychological effects. Some found solace in music or poetry, others turned to religion. One notable escape was falconry manuals. Yes, bird manuals. Imagine spending your week reading about avian dietary regimes. Meanwhile, your cousin practices sword fighting for fun. You might be given tasks. Noble women often managed household inventory. They counted linens and monitored grain supplies. Noble men might oversee estate affairs, tenant disputes, repairs, and taxes. It's like being a medieval landlord with extra velvet. Sometimes, a noble would get obsessed with alchemy. That's a fancy way of saying they mix strange things in bottles. They were hoping to find gold, or at least a distracting explosion. Their rooms often smelled of sulfur and regret. So, you pace, you count bricks, you talk to the cat, who has more personal space than you. You sit by the window, wondering if today is the day someone will write a song about you. You dream of travel, of leaving the castle walls behind. Okay, so you're monumentally bored, but at least you're safe, right? You dream of seeing a real city or a market with more than parsnips and onions. You sigh, then go back to your embroidery. Well, no, not even close. Because while your castle walls might be thick and your gates iron, there's a constant, nagging truth. War is never far away. If you're not actively in one, you're preparing for the next. That means everything in your home. The towers, the ramparts, the arrow slits, the murder holes, they exist not to protect your comfort, but to organize your panic. Let's say your neighboring lord's nephew insulted your cousin at last year's hunt, or someone failed to pay a dowry, or the king's mood just shifted with the wind. Any of these could spark a siege, and suddenly your home becomes a bolted-down fortress. Remember those charming tapestries you were counting yesterday? Now they're fuel. Your banquet feast is replaced by dwindling stores of salted meat and bean mush. Your courtyard is crammed with animals, extra guards, and peasants from the nearby village. Sieges were long, grueling, and psychologically draining. You'd hear distant drums, the clang of metal, the thud of siege engines battering your walls, and worst of all, silence, the kind where you just know someone is planning something. You go up to the ramparts to feel useful. They hand you a crossbow. It's heavier than your younger cousin and smells of rust. They don't expect you to fire it, but they expect you to be seen holding it. Morale is half the battle, and your terrified face is somehow a form of leadership. Down below, the defenders prepare boiling water. Hot water or heated sand is poured from the murder holes. Imagine storming a castle and getting a medieval steam facial to the face. Meanwhile, inside the castle, water is rationed. So is ale. So is firewood. You try to eat less, so everyone gets their fair share. You try not to look at the horses. You really try not to look at the rats. They're now potential meals. You sleep in your armor, not because it's comfortable. You might have to run or fight at any moment. If you thought sleeping in wool was bad, try sleeping in steel. Historians debate whether nobles actually participated in wall defense or just took symbolic roles. But one thing is clear. Everyone felt the pressure. There's also disease to consider. Sieges trap people together in cold, damp spaces, with dwindling food and no hygiene. Dysentery, typhus, and simple infections spread like rumors. Many died without firing a single arrow. Sometimes sieges ended with surrender, sometimes with bribery, sometimes after months the attackers just got bored or hungry and left, and sometimes they breached the walls. That's where the real nightmare begins. Once the enemy is in, it's chaos. Screaming, smoke, fires in the stables. You grab what you can, run to the cellars or the chapel. You hope your family name is still worth something. You hide behind a tapestry and pray they don't check twice. But let's rewind for now. No one's attacking yet, but just the possibility turns your daily life into a theater of defensive rituals. Inspections, drills, making sure the drawbridge chains aren't rusty. You check that the portcullis still works. Not even during a banquet, not even in your prayers. Every creak, every shout, every distant thunderstorm sounds like it could be the start of a siege. That tension never leaves, not even as you count bricks on another boring morning. Well done, you live in a castle. You're certainly at war. Even when peace pretends to visit, you've successfully avoided being burned alive or boiled in your own moat. But now you face a new medieval nightmare. Guests, not the friendly kind who drop by for a quick ale. No, these are important, noble guests. The kind who arrive with 6 carts, 30 retainers, and 4 hounds, and then declare with a sigh, "We'll stay for the season." This isn't a weekend visit, it's months. Medieval hospitality wasn't optional, it was a sacred duty. Refusing a guest could be seen as a political insult, so you smile, you bow, and inside, you scream. You're now the host, which means offering up your best rooms, often your own. You get shuffled off to the draftiest guest chamber, while Lord So-and-so lounges on your bed. Feeding them becomes a logistical nightmare. More mouths mean more food, more ale, more everything. The kitchen goes into full crisis mode. Chickens vanish from the yard. Ale barrels slowly drain. You're also expected to entertain them every day. That means music, games, perhaps even a hawking trip. And let's not forget the long, boring conversations about court politics. Historians still debate how much strain these visitors truly put on castle resources. Some say it cemented alliances. Others believe it was polite plunder. Whatever the truth, if your guest brings their own lute player, you're in for performances until dawn. The real challenge, though, is the subtle diplomacy. Guests observe everything. How clean the linens are, how warm the portage, whether your servant bows deeply enough. One misstep can turn into gossip that spreads across 4 counties. And guests don't travel alone, they bring their retinue. So, for every noble visitor, you're also dealing with a battalion of each needing food, lodging, and enough space to judge your interior design choices. Your servants are exhausted, nerves afraid. You start calculating how hard you'd have to cough, to fake the plague, and clear out the castle. It's not just nobles who visit, either. Clergy, knights, merchants, distant relatives, you name it, they'll show up, often unannounced. Inns were rare and suspiciously louse-ridden, so travelers relied on noble households for comfort. You know those movies where castle life looks so elegant and peaceful? They never show what happens when 3 separate noble families arrive on the same afternoon. Chaos ensues, seating charts become war zones, ancient feuds resurface. You, meanwhile, are trying to calculate if you can hide in the dovecote without being noticed. And here's the kicker. Once guests are in, they're very hard to get out. There's no polite medieval way to say, I think you've overstayed your welcome. You just keep feeding them weaker ale and hoping they get the hint. Now you know. Castle life isn't just about defending your home from siege. It's about surviving an extended visit from someone who thinks talking about their hawk's lineage is dinner conversation. As your third cousin's lute player prepares for another hour-long ballad, you start to question everything. War, you think, might just be simpler. Just when you think you've adjusted to the constant chatter of guests, you realize a new layer of chaos. Castle life is loud, incredibly loud. You might have imagined a quiet hall echoing with the chirping of birds outside. Romantic? Yes. Accurate? No. Almost every hour of the day, something is clanging, shouting, barking, or collapsing. From the moment the cock crows until the last candle goes out, your ears are under siege. The blacksmith starts early. You know he's working because you hear a rhythmic clang of metal. It's followed by the hiss of steam and some rather creative curses. He's fixing a horseshoe, or a gate hinge, or perhaps just hitting things to make everyone aware. Down the corridor, the kitchen explodes. Pots clatter, knives chop, the cook yells. Instructions, scullery boys squabble over parsnips, someone spills something that might once have been soup, a dog joins in, barking purposefully, though no one's quite sure whose dog it is anymore. The great hall is filled with people, not just nobles lounging in velvet, but servants, scribes, messengers, and a pigeon that got in through the rafters and refuses to leave. There's the scrape of wooden chairs, the groan of door hinges, the honking of geese in the courtyard, and the children, always the children, noble or servant, screaming, tripping upstairs, throwing apples. You try to find a quiet corner, only to discover someone is practicing the bagpipes badly. Castles amplify sound. The stone walls reflect every footstep, every echo, every grumbled insult. There are no carpets to absorb the noise, just flags, boots, and those straw mats that never stop rustling. At night, it doesn't stop, it just changes. Guards with dramatic footsteps, dogs barking at the wind, owls hooting as if they're rehearsing for a solo. Somewhere, a drunk stable boy is singing a love song to the wrong window. Historians debate how much of this noise people actually noticed, or if it was just a background hum. Some sources suggest that constant noise was one of the reasons nobles would escape to rural manors. Big ones, small ones, bells for prayers, for meals, for curfew, for mass, and then there are the bells. Bells for incoming visitors, for fires, for meetings, for announcements. You start to flinch every time a bell tolls, because it always means more work. If you're near the armory when the knights are preparing to leave, say goodbye to your hearing. The clank of chainmail, the snorts of horses, the creak of saddle leather. It's like living next to a medieval construction site. Thunder reverberates so sharply you half expect a divine visitor. Even nature contributes. The wind howls through arrow slits with a pitch that could summon genies. Rain drums on the slate roofs. Sometimes you try to stuff bits of cloth in your ears. It works for a minute until the rooster starts again, or someone drops a goblet. Sleep becomes more of a gamble than a guarantee. You drift off only to be jolted awake by the clang of the drawbridge chains, or a distant shriek of someone who discovered a bat in the larder again. You start to dream of silence. You imagine soft footsteps, whispering breezes, maybe even a gentle tick-tock of a clock if they'd been invented yet. But for now, you live in a castle, and that means every sneeze echoes like a trumpet. Every footstep sounds like thunder. You already know what it means. Someone has gone into labor, and peace, that sweet golden quiet, is just another legend in a dusty monk's manuscript. You lie there, awake again. When you hear someone crying softly a few rooms away, it's faint, polite, but unmistakable. And in a medieval castle, this is no small event. Birth in this world is not just dangerous, but heroic, terrifying, and agonizingly public. You toss and turn, whispering a silent wish for the poor woman. Whoever she is now at the center of a perilous gamble. Even noble women, surrounded by attendants, herbs, and prayers, faced daunting odds. No amount of silk sheets or carved cradles could guarantee a safe delivery. You've heard the stories. Everyone has. There's no doctor in shining armor. Instead, there's the midwife, a combination of herbalist and local legend. She arrives with her bundle of tools, oils, linen, blunt knives, sachets of dried flowers, and an eternal look of grim concern. She's assisted at dozens of births, perhaps hundreds, and she still winces with every scream. Meanwhile, the room transforms. Tapestries are pulled across windows, candles are lit, doors are barred. A birthing stool might be brought in, a strange, legless contraption with handles and a hole. If not, the woman will squat or be supported by two strong maids. And you, if you're nearby, will listen. Because sound travels, remember. These walls hold no secrets. The pain fills the air like incense. The screams, the prayers, the sound of water basins, the creak of floorboards. As more women arrive, someone starts a whispered rosary, another retches from nerves. Historians debate whether noble women had it any easier than peasant women during childbirth. On the one hand, they had better food, rest, and access to midwives. On the other, they were expected to produce heirs relentlessly, regardless of the toll on their bodies. For some, every birth was a battlefield. If the baby comes quickly, there's a collective sigh of relief. If it lingers, people prepare for the worst. Church bells might toll, a priest is summoned, holy relics are placed by the bedside. Everyone knows what's at stake. Sometimes mother and child survive, sometimes neither, and sometimes one lives while the other does not. And the silence afterwards is louder than the screams. You might hear, "It's a boy." Cheers, toasts, the cook brings out preserved pears to celebrate. Or it's a girl, and the mood, though still warm, settles a bit. Inheritance laws are cruel. Daughters are precious, but sons are currency. Later, the baby is christened quickly, often within hours, because life here is fragile. If the baby is noble, there might be a naming ceremony. If the mother is noble, she gets a lying-in period, a few weeks to rest and recover, assuming no infection, no fever, no postpartum humors that medieval medicine cannot explain. There are customs, too. Charms tied to the cradle, incantations against the evil eye, whispered fears of changelings and spirits. Even the most rational lord secretly clutches a good luck charm just in case. And if you are a woman, you know your turn may come. Every lord has buried at least one wife or a daughter. It hangs over you like a shadow, an expectation wrapped in lace and dread. You smile through it, plan names, fold baby clothes with a handful of hope. But you always know what's at stake. Men pretend not to listen, but they do. They drink, they pray, they avoid the birthing room as if it were cursed, but they always pause near the door. So, tonight, you lie still, counting the contractions by sound. You imagine the woman's clenched hands, the sweat on her brow, the flutter of a life just beginning, or perhaps ending. You realize, with a quiet, weary ache, even in the richest of castles, life comes into this world the hard way. As dawn breaks, you confront another reality. Your outfit might be expensive, but it's not comfortable. Clothing in a castle isn't just for warmth or modesty. It's a declaration of status, wealth, who matters, and who doesn't. And it usually comes with a side of discomfort. And about 4 too many layers. You start with a linen shirt or undergarment. It's the only thing that actually touches your skin. Good news. Linen breathes. Bad news. It's not yet dry from yesterday's snow, and the fit smells vaguely of mutton. Next, wool. Always wool. Tunics, hose, gowns, dresses, piled on like a medieval lasagna. Soft wool if you're lucky, scratchy stuff if you're not. It's heavy, so heavy, like someone put a damp blanket on your dreams. Then come the fastenings. You don't just slip into a medieval outfit. You lace, you cinch, you belt, you pin. Your servant pulls your surcoat so tight your ribs. Consider early retirement. Your hose are held up with garters that haven't seen elasticity since Rome. Buttons, if you have them, are ornamental. The real clothing relies on laces that are always tangling. And shoes, don't pretend medieval footwear is designed for support. They're made of stiff leather thin soles with no grip. They're decorative foot coffins, good for about 3 steps and 1 unfortunate cobblestone. Also, no left or right foot, just 2 identical shapes. It's a fashion roulette every morning. And don't think you get to choose what you wear. Castle fashion is dictated by social expectation. Wearing something too simple makes people whisper. Wearing something too fancy makes them really whisper. If not, it's wool, and a stolen scarf. Historians debate whether these layers were truly practical or deeply rooted in status cues. Probably both. If you're a noble, you have imported fabrics from Italy. Now imagine trying to use the privy in all of this. You're fumbling with your many layers, bending over an icy hole, your sleeves threatening to dip into peril. It's a daily dance of coordination and prayer. Accessories offer no comfort. Hats are stiff, often tall, sometimes absurd. Belts are decorative and slightly useful if you need to hang your dagger. Cloaks are warm. Yes, but they drag through puddles and small dogs if you're not careful. For women, the suffering intensifies. Corset-like bodices, head coverings, their doublets are padded, as if someone's preparing for a padded joust. Lacing that requires 2 maids and a ladder. Long sleeves that sweep everything off the table. You can't even write a letter without risking an ink spill. Men aren't much better off. Hose are tight enough to reveal what they had for breakfast. Some even wear those pointed shoes called poulaines, so long they have to be tied to the knees. But here's the kicker. You can't just take it off. Your identity, your outfit, your rank, your wealth, your family, it's all encoded in the fabric. Blue dyes are expensive. Purple is almost royal. So even if you're sweating, you suffer in silence. And don't forget, laundry. Outer garments don't get washed often. Water is precious, soap is rare, and cleaning is done painstakingly with sand, urine, or lye soap. It stripped away stains and your hopes. So you itch, you sweat, and you adjust the lace around your throat for the 7th time before dinner. Because while your life might be cold and dirty, you still have to look impressive while enduring it. A few quiet days have passed. No guests, no sieges, no mysterious wailing from the church tower. Just you, your wool tunic, and a faint sense of calm. Naturally, it doesn't last. Because just as you start thinking, hey, I might actually nap today, a servant rushes in with the news. The peasants are revolting again. Yes, outside your castle walls, the very people who grow your food and chop your wood are angry. They are now waving pitchforks and muttering about fair taxes and eating more than onions. You shouldn't be surprised. Castle life is built on the labor of hundreds, sometimes thousands, of villagers. They farm, they bake, they shear, they harvest, In return, they get protection, vague promises, and the occasional feast day with watery ale. But when harvests fail, or taxes rise, or someone accidentally tramples a cow during a hunt, unrest brews, and when unrest brews, torches usually follow. You hurry to the ramparts. Below, a small group of peasants is gathered. Not a mob, not yet, but it has a quiet hum of angry organization. You recognize old Garin at the front. Last year he gave you a goose. This year he's wielding a flail like it's a banner of justice. Your guards ready their weapons, tell you to stay calm, but you know what's coming next. Negotiation, pacification, or confrontation. Sometimes nobles send bread. Sometimes they send arrows. Historians debate whether these revolts were truly dangerous or more performative. Extra guards at the gate, horses hidden in the inner stables, a way for peasants to vent and remind nobles they weren't invisible. But the fear is real. Every lord remembers the tale of a distant cousin who underestimated a village uprising. He ended up locked in his own wine cellar. The castle goes into quiet lockdown. You're told not to worry, but everyone's voice is half an octave higher than usual. Maybe you send an extra bull, promise a new well. At dinner, no one mentions the shouts outside the walls, but every ear is cocked. And here's the awkward part. Sometimes the peasants have a point. You've seen the tax rolls, you've tasted the venison banquets while they chew on parsnip gruel. You know the steward lost 3 sacks of barley and blamed it on donkey-sized rats. You try to make things better, but good intentions don't fix a broken thatch roof or a winter without firewood. Sometimes the revolts get clever. Someone sneaks into the castle pretending to be a delivery boy. They start writing messages on the walls. Less taxes, more bread. Your cloak is ugly. The last one hurts more than it should. Sometimes the peasants take to the woods. You hear whispers of outlaws, former farmers turned rebels, stealing sheep, burning out houses, making tax collectors' lives difficult. Robin Hoods, some of them, but most are hunted down like game. So you retreat further into the castle, pacing its echoing halls with new caution. You try to study estate maps, looking for areas you can improve, but really, you're just trying to figure out how long this system can teeter without completely collapsing. You try to sleep, but your dreams are filled with angry voices and torches at the gates. You remind yourself, you live in a castle, you're safe. Until the drawbridge breaks, or the guards starve, or someone inside decides they've had enough. Because the truth is, stone walls don't just keep people out, sometimes they trap the truth inside. You wake to a familiar, slightly embarrassing routine. Scratching, not because you have an itch, but because your entire body feels like it's hosting a flea banquet. Welcome back to the less glamorous world of medieval hygiene. Even the grandest castles are breeding grounds for lice, mites, and other unwelcome guests. No hot showers, no lavender-scented soap. Bathing, while not entirely rare, is complicated and labor-intensive. It is often viewed with suspicion. Many believe that prolonged soaking in warm water could open up pores to disease, or worse, to improper temptations. So, most people settle for the medieval version of a wet wipe. A damp cloth behind the ears, a quick rub of the teeth with crushed mint or sage. As you pull on yesterday's tunic, you feel that distinctive itch at the back of your neck. Your lady's maid catches you scratching and immediately goes to fetch the vinegar and a fine-toothed comb. You sigh. Let's talk about the washing. It happens, but it's not easy. Linen eventually gets washed. Outer garments, not so much. They're brushed, perhaps scented with sachets of lavender or herbs, and that's it. As for bedding, the straw in your mattress is replaced a few times a year. You probably don't want to know what's living in it by autumn. You might own a comb, but, unless someone is regularly delousing you, it's essentially decorative. Head lice are so common that some noble families had designated nitpickers among their servants. That's someone's job. Good morrow, my lady. Shall I inspect your scalp today? And beneath all those layers of wool and linen, you're constantly sweating. Castles might be cold, but wool doesn't breathe well. And let's not forget the summer months, when those stone walls trap heat like a pizza oven. You take off your cloak at night and discover you've sweated through 2 layers. Foot odor. Medieval shoes aren't exactly orthotics. You spend hours in stiff leather, walking through mud, effluent, and horse droppings. Scented foot powder exists, but only for the very wealthy. Everyone else just hopes their shoes absorb the shame. Historians still debate how often nobles actually bathed. Some point to records of scented baths and soaps imported from Aleppo or Castile. Others argue these were reserved for special occasions. The average lord still smelled of damp wool and regret. There are public bathhouses in towns, yes, but they are often viewed with suspicion, partly due to their reputation as places of moral laxity. In castles, private baths are a luxury. A wooden barrel filled bucket by bucket. It is then dragged into a room near the fire. Sharing is common. Water is precious. Heating it is arduous. So several people might bathe in the same tub, one after another. Just hope you're first in line. To help with body odor, people wore herbal amulets or carried pomanders, small metal balls filled with fragrant things like cloves, cinnamon, or dried rose petals. It doesn't solve the problem, but it might mask it for 10 blessed minutes. Your hair is greased with animal fat or lye soap. It's elaborately styled if you're a noble, covered by a wimple or veil if you're a woman, or a fancy hat if you're a man. Either way, it's more decorative than hygienic. And let's not forget insects, not just fleas and lice, but bedbugs too. They crawl in the straw, live in the wooden bed frames, hide in the seams. You scratch, you sigh, you switch to a cloak that might have fewer inhabitants. And when disease strikes, and it will, it spreads quickly. Dirty hands, shared goblets, poor sanitation. No one knows about germs, just bad humors and curses. So, you chew on herbs, tie ribbons around your wrist, and hope the next fever isn't the fever. You close your eyes, scratch again, and wonder if you can get a rash from thinking too much. Welcome to castle life. You might look like royalty, but beneath those fur-lined sleeves, you're just a noble itching your way through a very scratchy world. You're halfway through your bland midday meal. You're chewing on what might be yesterday's goose leg or a cleverly disguised parsnip. When a faint crash echoes from the courtyard, another barrel has toppled. No doubt, you barely react. But the real surprise comes an hour later when word reaches the hall. Some villagers have taken refuge inside the castle walls again. Another band of brigands has been spotted in the forest. Which means, once again, you're sleeping with one eye open. Because, while castles are built to keep things out, sometimes they forget the biggest threat is from within. From a poorly secured gate, a bribed guard, or worse, someone who lives here deciding they've had enough. Whispers start to circulate among the staff. Something about missing silver goblets. A note found near the butter churn. The steward pails. You start to wonder if the stable boy who's always whistling off-key is truly loyal. Welcome to the constant fear of betrayal. You can't blame them. Life outside the castle is grim. Fields flood, wolves pick off sheep, taxes rise, rations dwindle. And here you are, a relatively clean noble, draped in layers of privilege. If you were a peasant, you might also consider storming the gates. Inside the castle, things aren't much better. Everyone is on edge. The captain of the guard conducts random inspections, keeping a close eye on the servants. Suddenly, Your favorite kitchen maid isn't allowed to serve you directly, just in case she's putting something extra in the soup. You hate this. You hate that you can't trust the people who dress you, feed you, clean your sheets. But this is the reality of castle life. The walls protect you from armies, but not always from the very people who help you put on your hose. Historians still debate how common such betrayals were. Some say treachery was rare, while others argue that castle mutinies were more common than we admit. You know the stories. The noble who was poisoned by his own cupbearer, the lady's maid who opened the gate for her brigand lover, the apprentice who accidentally left a postern door unlatched during a siege. None of it seems far-fetched anymore. Suddenly, everyone's behavior takes on new meaning. The steward's sidelong glance, the falconer's long absences, even your usually cooperative cousin, who's been unusually quiet lately. Paranoia creeps in like a draft through a privy chute. To regain control, you call a meeting. You reaffirm rules, praise loyalty, distribute extra bread rations, just enough to imply generosity, not weakness. The cook grumbles, but the guards nod grimly. Still, you sleep with a dagger by your bed, not because you expect a fight, but because you might. You've started watching the hidden door in the larder that leads to the cellar tunnel. Not many people know about that one. Consider this. It's not all drama and daggers, of course. Sometimes the threat turns out to be nothing. Just gossip, or a rat overturning a bucket. But that doesn't stop your mind from writing its own scenario every time the wind slams a shutter. You wonder, is this what power feels like? Not freedom, but constant suspicion. Not luxury, but the awareness of everything that could go wrong if people changed their minds. You long for the days when your biggest worries were scratchy hose or sour ale. Now, even your dreams feel political, because in a castle, you don't just rule with banners and bloodlines. You rule with vigilance, with whispers, with the quiet, exhausting art of keeping everyone just happy enough. You've adapted now, more or less. You've learned how to sleep through the barking dogs and eat around the garage. You can subtly scratch flea bites without looking You've trained yourself to walk quietly on the creaking floors. You can interpret the complex politics of who sits where at dinner. You know which tapestries block the worst drafts. You even know the difference between the panic of a fox in the chicken coop and someone spilling pot. But no matter how many castle routines you master, one truth remains. No one, not even the richest noble, sleeps well in a medieval castle. Take tonight, for example. Your room is dark, save for a flickering candle, the dying red glow of a half-hearted fire. The wind howls through the arrow slits like a lonely spirit testing loose shutters. The mattress is lumpy. The wool blanket weighs as much as a stack of hay. Your breath still clouds in the air. A mouse gnaws something in the corner, probably your shoe. You're too tired to care. You close your eyes. The pillow shifts. It's stuffed with straw. Every turn feels like a shifting barnyard. You try to sleep anyway, because dawn comes early. No one excuses you from duties just because you spent the night awake listening to bats. Then there's the noise. Always the noise. Someone paces in the corridor in heavy boots. A door creaks open somewhere far away. A baby starts to cry. The new arrival from last week. There's also a faint cough from the next room. Repetitive. You try not to think about the plague. Even when it's quiet, your mind won't let you rest. You replay conversations from the day. You worry about grain stores. Wonder if the moat will freeze again. Your cousin mentioned a letter from court. The steward looked odd. And why did the hawk look at you that way? Historians debate what medieval sleep cycles were like. Some say people slept in two distinct phases. First sleep and second sleep. with an hour of waking in the middle of the night for prayers or contemplation. You are living proof that this might be true. You've become an expert at staring at the ceiling beams. You wonder if they creak more before collapsing. Even your bed isn't really yours. You share the room, remember? A servant snores by the fireplace. Someone's curled up under a pile of old tapestries. You don't mind them, not really. But tonight, someone ate garlic. It's swirling around the room like an invisible curse. You flip your pillow. Cold again? That's something. You breathe deeply. You try to relax. You try to remember something pleasant. Maybe a summer festival. Or that one meal 3 winters ago that was actually seasoned. Then finally you begin to drift. The cold still bites. The wind still whispers. But your body gives in. Your mind floats. And in that rare moment of quietude, when the candle finally gutters ... and no one is screaming about a loose pig in the larder ... you find something that feels almost like peace. Not luxury, not silence, but the weary calm of someone who has survived another day in the sooty, chaotic, strangely majestic prison that is a medieval castle. You sleep, knowing that tomorrow will greet you with the same chaos all over again, and yet somehow you're okay with that, because even in a place full of barking dogs and icy chamber pots, you've carved out a rhythm. You've adapted. You've endured, and now you sleep. Your breathing slows. The castle fades, stone by stone, into a soft shadow. The cold recedes, as if the wind itself has grown weary. That flickering torchlight behind your eyes dims to a steady glow and then vanishes. The footsteps in the corridor become distant waves, lapping on the shore of slumber. Outside, the moon wraps its silver light across the quiet ramparts. Guards lean on their pikes. Geese are finally silent. Even the rats pause for a moment of quiet. And you are warm, still, safe under the weight of wool and time. You can let go of the lumpy mattress, the creaking timbers, the endless noise. You've survived the cold, the chamber pot, the gossip, the garlic. You've done enough today. You've endured the boredom, the clamor, the shadows. You've found your footing in a world that never stops shifting beneath you. Let it fade. Let your muscles loosen. Let your thoughts unravel like a thread from a spindle. You are no longer in the castle. You are nowhere and everywhere, floating between stone and sky, where no walls confine you, and no drapes hold secrets. Sleep now. Let the fire go out. Let the world rest. Let the story pause. You'll wake soon enough, but not yet, not for a while, not until you truly drift far, far away. The world returns, not as a gentle awakening, but as a dull ache. It's the ache of cold that has settled deep into your bones overnight. You are the lord of this castle, or perhaps the lady. The responsibility is the same. It's a weight that settles upon you before your feet even touch the icy floor. Your first thought isn't of breakfast, but of duty. The steward will be waiting with the daily accounts. He'll report on grain levels, the state of the eastern wall, and a dispute between 2 tenants. One claims the other's pig has bewitched his chickens. You must listen patiently. You must dispense justice. That seems fair, even when the problem seems utterly absurd. Your marriage was not a matter of the heart, but a contract, an alliance sealed with land and a promise of heirs. You and your spouse are partners in this enterprise of survival and status. You share a bed for warmth and duty, but your thoughts are often miles apart. He worries about the loyalty of his knights. She worries about the dwindling supply of winter herbs, and you both worry about the health of your only son. The castle itself is a demanding beast. It is always crumbling. A section of the rampart walk needs repair. The stable roof is leaking again. Right over the prized wall, the well is running low. Every day brings a new demand on your resources. Your decisions affect everyone within these walls, and in the village beyond. A harsh word can ruin a servant's week. A lenient judgment can be seen as weakness by your rivals. You are constantly performing on a stage made of stone. Even your clothing is a tool of the quality of your velvet, the richness of the fur trim on your cloak. These are not vanities. They are signals of power, a message to visitors and subjects alike that your house is strong. You host feasts, not just for celebration, but for politics. The seating arrangement is a delicate map of favor and influence. Placing a lesser baron too close to the head table can cause an insult. Placing him too far can create an enemy. You must remember names, lineages, old feuds, and recent alliances. It's an endless game of chess where the pieces are people, and a wrong move could cost you more than just a game. The pressure is immense. You are the pillar holding up this entire world. If you show weakness, if you falter, the whole structure could collapse. So you cultivate an aura of calm authority, even when, on the inside, you are just as cold and tired as everyone else. You walk through the great hall, nodding to those who bow. Your face is a mask of serene command. You are the lord. You are the lady. You are a prisoner of your own rank. The solitude you crave is the one thing you can never have. Even in your private chamber, the solar, you are not truly alone. A scribe is there to take down your letters. A page is there to fetch you wine, and the whispers of the castle seep through the very stones. You hear of the guard who drank too much ale on his watch. You hear of the laundress who is with child again. You hear of the cook's fury over the missing salt. You are the center of this web, and every vibration reaches you. Sometimes you climb to the highest point of the keep. You look out over your lands, the fields, the forest, the distant hills. For a moment, you feel a sense of ownership, of power. Then the wind bites, and you remember the truth. You don't own this land. The land owns you. It holds you here, bound by duty and the weight of your name. You must see to the training of the men. You must inspect the armory, the smell of oiled leather and whetstones. You must ensure the castle can be defended at a moment's notice, because peace is just the interval between wars, and death is always a potential visitor. You attend Mass in the chilly chapel, kneeling on the hard stone. You pray for a good harvest, for healthy children, for victory in battle. You pray for a moment of genuine peace. The priest offers words of comfort, but he, too, is part of the structure. His loyalties are to God, but also to you, his patron. As evening falls, you sit by the fire, the accounts finally done, the disputes temporarily settled. You watch the flames, and for a moment, you let the mask slip. You are just a person, wrapped in wool and worry, hoping to survive until the morning, hoping that the pig did not, in fact, bewitch the chickens, because if it did, you have no idea what you're supposed to do about it. This is your life, a constant vigilance, a heavy crown, and the endless, biting cold of the stone. Now, let's leave the lord and lady to their worries. Let's descend the winding stairs, past the chambers of nobility, down into the bustling, clattering, and often ignored world of the servants. Your life, as a servant, is governed by bells and the needs of others. You wake before dawn, not to the crow of a rooster, but to the sharp clang of the kitchen bell. Your bed is a straw pallet in a crowded attic, or a corner of a hallway. You share it with 3 other souls, all of you smelling of sweat and wood smoke. There is no privacy here. There are no secrets. Your first task is to get the fires going. You haul wood up endless stairs, your back aching before the sun is even up. You coax embers back to life, your face covered in soot. The castle is a cold beast, and your job is to try and warm its stone heart. If you are a kitchen maid, your world is one of heat, steam, and shouting. You pluck chickens, scrub pots with sand, and chop endless piles of root vegetables. The cook is a tyrant, his wooden spoon a weapon of authority. He might rap your knuckles for a poorly chopped onion, or reward you with a leftover heel of bread if the partridge is good. If you are a lady's maid, your world is more refined, but just as demanding. You must know how to lace a bodice so tight it takes the breath away. You must be able to style hair with hot tongs and animal fat. You are the keeper of your lady's secrets. You see her at her most vulnerable. Without her silks and her titles, you know her fears, her irritations, her hidden sorrows. This knowledge is a form of power, but a dangerous one. A misplaced word could see you thrown out into the cold. The men have their own hierarchy. The stable hands, smelling of horse and leather. The footmen, who must stand silently for hours, invisible but always present. The guards in the garrison, polishing their leather and gambling with dice made from bone. Your payment is not in coin, but in kind. A roof over your head, however drafty, food in your belly, however bland, and a set of clothes, usually cast-offs from your betters. You are part of a massive, intricate machine. Every task, from emptying the chamber pots to mending a torn tunic, is essential. If one part fails, the whole system feels it. The gossip network is the lifeblood of the servant class. It is your newspaper, your entertainment, your warning system. You learn who is in favor with the Lord, and who is not. You learn which guest is generous and which is cruel. You learn of secret meetings in the garden and arguments behind closed doors. This information is traded in whispers in the corridors, over laundry tubs, and while polishing silver. Friendships are fierce but pragmatic. You rely on each other for help, for comfort, for a shared eye roll at a noble's foolish command. But you also know that anyone can be an informant. A desire for a better position can turn a friend into a spy. You rarely leave the castle walls. The world outside is a rumor, a story told by a visiting merchant or a tired soldier. Your universe is this collection of stone walls, echoing halls, and endless tasks. You have hopes, of course. A kitchen maid might dream of marrying a well-to-do farmer. A page might dream of becoming a squire, and then a knight. But for most, this is it. A life of service. A life lived in the shadow of the great and powerful. You see the waste of the feasts, the fine clothes, the careless luxury. You know the true cost of their lifestyle, because you are the one paying it with your labor. There is resentment, of course, a quiet, simmering pot of it, but there is also loyalty. The castle is your home, for better or worse. The noble family is your family, however dysfunctional. You take a strange pride in the running of this place. When a feast goes perfectly, when a visiting dignitary is impressed, you feel a flicker of satisfaction. You are the invisible gears that make the grand clockwork of the castle turn. As night falls, you finally get a moment to yourself. You sit by a fire in the servants' hall. Darning a sock, you listen to someone play a simple tune on a wooden flute. The music is not for a banquet, it is for you. And in that moment, you feel a sense of community, a shared weariness, a shared survival. You are not noble, you are not powerful, but you are essential. You are the foundation upon which the castle stands. And as you finally crawl onto your straw pallet, your tired body sinks into a deep, dreamless sleep. Because tomorrow, the bells will ring again before dawn, and the whole cycle will begin anew. Let's turn our gaze to the defenders of the castle, the men-at-arms, the archers, the knights. Their lives are a strange mix of extreme discipline and crushing boredom. If you are a knight, your identity is forged in steel. Your armor is your second skin, your sword an extension of your arm. But you spend far more time training than you do fighting. Your day starts in the tilt yard, the open space in the bailey. You practice your swordplay against a wooden pell, hacking at it until your arms burn and your tunic is soaked with sweat. You practice jousting, charging at a rotating target that will swing around and smack you if you're too slow. It is a painful way to learn precision. Your equipment is your life, and it demands constant care. Chainmail must be cleaned of rust, a tedious process involving a barrel of sand and vinegar. Leather straps must be oiled to keep them from cracking. Your sword must be kept sharp, your shield repaired. This work is done by squires and armorers, but the responsibility is yours. A broken strap in battle means death. The garrison of men-at-arms lives a more communal life. They sleep in barracks, rows of simple bunks in a long, drafty room. The air smells of unwashed bodies, leather, and cheap ale. Their days are filled with drills. Archery practice at the butts, learning to form a shield wall, practicing pike formations. The captain of the guard is a harsh master, his voice a constant bark of commands. He knows that discipline is the only thing that stands between order and chaos. But for every hour of training, there are 10 hours of waiting. This is the great enemy of the soldier. Boredom. You stand, watch on the ramparts, staring at the same unchanging landscape for hours. The wind is your only companion. You pace the wall walk, your footsteps echoing in the silence. You count the stones, you watch the clouds, you pray for something to happen. To pass the time, you gamble. Dice games are forbidden, but everyone plays them. You wager a copper coin, a button from your tunic, your next ration of ale. You tell stories, tall tales of battles you've never fought, and of women you've never met. You sing bawdy songs that would make the castle chaplain blush. The tension between the knights and the common soldiers is always present. The knights are nobility, fighting for glory and honor. They get better food, better quarters, better equipment. The men-at-arms are professionals. Fighting for pay, they see the knight's quest for glory as a dangerous vanity. They know that it is the steady shield wall, not the lone heroic charge, that wins a battle. But in a siege, these distinctions melt away. Everyone is a defender. Everyone is a target. The archer on the wall, squinting against the sun, the man-at-arms pouring boiling sand through the murder holes, the knight, his fine armor dented, leading a desperate defense of the gatehouse. They are all bound by a shared purpose. To hold the walls, they feel a grim camaraderie, a bond forged in shared fear and danger. They fight for the Lord who pays them. Yes, but mostly they fight for the man standing next to them, and they fight for their own survival. When the fighting is over, the aftermath is grim. You help carry the wounded to the infirmary. You listen to their cries, the smell of blood and pain thick in the air. You help bury the dead, a quick prayer over a shallow grave. There is little time for grief. The walls must be repaired, the supplies restocked. The watch must be set again, because the war is never truly over. So you clean your sword, mend your shield, and wait. You wait for the next alarm bell, the next call to arms. You are a weapon, honed and ready, kept in a stone sheath, waiting for the moment you are needed. It is a hard life, a life of waiting and violence. But it has a simple, brutal clarity that is missing from the complex world of court politics. You know who your enemy is. He is the one on the other side of the wall, and you know your duty, to keep him there, in the shadow of the keep. There is another world, the world of the castle's children. For a noble child, the castle is both a playground and a prison. You have the run of the place. From the dusty attics to the bustling kitchens, you play games of hide-and-seek in the labyrinthine corridors. You chase pigeons in the courtyard and stage mock battles with wooden swords, but there are dangers everywhere. A fall from the ramparts, a kick from a warhorse in the stables, the deep, dark water of the moat. Your life is a strange mix of freedom and strict supervision. A nursemaid follows you everywhere, clucking with worry. Your education begins early. It is not about books and learning for its own sake. It is about preparing you for your future role. If you are a boy, you are the heir. You are sent to be a page in another lord's castle at the age of 7. There, you learn to serve at the table, to care for armor, to ride a horse. You learn the basics of weaponry and the rules of chivalry. It is a harsh apprenticeship, far from your mother's care. If you are a girl, your education is domestic. You learn to manage a household from your mother. You learn embroidery, music, and perhaps a little reading. Not enough to be considered scholarly, which is unladylike, but enough to read the Bible or a book of hours. Your primary value is in the marriage market. You are a political asset, a way to forge an alliance or acquire land. Your wedding is being planned before you've even reached puberty. Childhood is short. You are expected to grow up quickly. The concept of a playful, carefree youth does not really exist. Your games mimic the adult world. The dolls you play with are dressed as ladies and knights. The stories you are told are of saints, martyrs, and heroic warriors. There is little room for fantasy or whimsy. Toys are simple and often homemade. A carved wooden animal, a ball made of stitched leather and stuffed with rags, a spinning top. Your closest companions are often the children of the upper servants, the children of the steward or the captain of the guard. You play with them, but you are always aware of the difference in your status. You are the one who gives the orders in your games. Sickness is a constant fear. Childhood diseases that are now minor can be a death sentence. A fever, a cough, a rash, any of these could be the end. The mortality rate for children is terrifyingly high. Many of your siblings may have died in infancy. This reality shapes the way your parents treat you. They may seem distant, almost afraid to love you too much. Losing a child is a common sorrow, but it is a deep one. You find comfort where you can, in the warmth of the hounds sleeping by the fire, in the stories of an old servant who has time to sit with you, in the rare moments of affection from your busy parents. You learn to be tough, to be resilient. You learn to hide your fears and your tears. You are a child of the castle, a product of its harsh, unyielding stone. You are learning the lessons of survival that will serve you in the adult world. A world you will be entering all too soon. You watch the knights in the yard, and you dream of glory. You watch your mother manage the household, and you learn the weight of responsibility. The castle is your teacher. Its lessons are written in stone, in steel, and in the silent, watchful eyes of your ancestors, whose portraits hang in the great hall, judging your every move. You are the future of your house. It is a heavy burden for such small shoulders to bear, but you do not know any other life. This stone world is the only world you have ever known, and you are learning to navigate it, one day at a time. Let us now seek the quiet solitude of the castle chapel. It is a small, cold space, but it holds immense power. This is the domain of the castle chaplain, a man caught between the world of God and the world of men. He is often the most educated person in the castle. He can read and write not only in the vernacular, but also in Latin, the language of the church and of scholarship. He serves as the family's spiritual guide. He leads daily mass, hears confessions, and offers prayers for the living and the dead. His voice, chanting in the echoing stone chapel, is a constant feature of castle life. But his duties extend far beyond the spiritual. He is often the castle's scribe and record keeper. He writes the Lord's letters, his hand carefully forming the elegant script. He keeps the household accounts, his knowledge of arithmetic invaluable. He might also be the children's tutor, teaching them their letters and numbers, and drilling them in the catechism. His position is one of trust and influence. He is privy to the family's secrets, both confessed in the chapel and discussed in the solar. He has the ear of both the Lord and the Lady. This gives him a subtle power that he must wield carefully. A word from him can influence a lord's decision, or soothe a lady's troubled mind. The chapel itself is a sanctuary from the noise and chaos of the castle. The air is thick with the scent of old stone, beeswaxed candles, and incense. Light filters through a single stained glass window, painting colored patterns on the stone floor. It is a place of quiet contemplation. Servants might slip in for a moment of prayer during their busy day. Soldiers might come to ask for a blessing before a battle. The lady of the castle might spend hours here, kneeling in prayer, finding solace from the pressures of her life. But even here, the outside world in truth, the chapel is also a display of the Lord's piety and wealth. The altar cloths may be of fine silk, embroidered with gold thread. The chalice and paten may be of silver gilt. A visiting bishop would judge the Lord's status by the richness of his chapel. Religion permeates every aspect of castle life. The day is structured around the canonical hours. The ringing of the chapel bell for matins, lauds, prime, terce, sext, none, vespers, and feast days and saints' days break the monotony of the year. They are occasions for religious observance, but also for feasting and celebration. Christmas, with its 12 days of festivities, Easter, with its solemn services and joyous conclusion, these are the great landmarks of the calendar. But there is also a darker side to medieval faith. Superstition is rampant. People believe in omens, curses, and the power of the evil eye. They see the hand of God or the devil in everything. A failed harvest, a sudden illness, a stillborn child, these could all be signs of divine displeasure or demonic influence. The chaplain must fight a constant battle against this folk religion, reminding his flock to put their faith in the church, not in charms and potions. But he too may secretly believe that the world is a battleground between good and evil. He sees sin and temptation everywhere, in the pride of the knights, the gossip of the servants, the greed of the merchants. His role is to be a moral compass in this often immoral world. He offers the promise of salvation, of a better life after this one, a powerful promise in a world filled with hardship and suffering. So the candles flicker in the chapel, the chanting echoes off the cold stone, and the chaplain keeps his lonely watch, a keeper of souls in a fortress of stone, a reminder that, even in an age of violence and pragmatism, the search for meaning and salvation is a powerful human need. The sun sets, and the castle transforms. The familiar spaces of the day become alien and menacing. This is the time when another world awakens, the world of fear and superstition. As darkness falls, the torches are lit. They cast long dancing shadows, that twist familiar objects into monstrous shapes. A suit of armor in a corner looks like a waiting spectre. A tapestry seems to writhe with hidden figures. The wind, howling through the arrow slits, sounds like the wail of a lost soul. Every creak of a floorboard, every rustle in the straw is a source of alarm. The people of the castle are deeply superstitious. They believe the night is full of dangers, both natural and supernatural. Wolves howl in the forest, and some believe werewolves roam among them. The hoot of an owl could be an omen of death. They believe that ghosts haunt the castle, the spirit of a murdered lord, the ghost of a lady who died in childbirth. Every castle has its stories, its resident phantoms. These tales are told in hushed voices around the fire. They serve as both entertainment and a warning. To protect themselves, people rely on a mixture of Christian faith and older, pagan beliefs. They cross themselves when they hear a strange noise, but they also carry charms and amulets. A rabbit's foot for good luck, a pouch of salt to ward off evil spirits, a piece of iron tucked into a pocket. Herbs are hung over doorways to keep out witches. Rosemary for remembrance. St. John's wort to repel demons. The fear of witchcraft is very real. Any woman who is old, solitary, or skilled with herbs could be suspected. A crop failure, a sick cow, a sudden illness, all could be blamed on a witch's curse. The accusations are often fueled by personal grudges or community hysteria, and the consequences can be brutal. Dreams are seen as powerful portents. A dream of falling could mean a loss of status. A dream of teeth could mean the death of a loved one. People would consult the chaplain or a local wise woman to interpret their dreams. The night is also a time of practical fears. The fear of fire, as we have discussed, the fear of intruders. The castle is locked down at night. The drawbridge is up. The portcullis is down. The gates are barred. But there is always the fear that a traitor within could open a door, or that a determined enemy could find a way to scale the walls in the darkness. The night watch patrols, the ramparts, their call, "All's well," is a comfort in the darkness, but it also serves to remind you of the constant need for vigilance. Even sleep is not a safe refuge. People believe that demons, like incubi and succubi, can visit them in the night. They pray for protection before they close their eyes. They might sleep with a crucifix or a holy relic under their pillow. The darkness of the castle is absolute. Away from the flickering light of a fire or a candle, you can see nothing. It is a profound, disorienting blackness. It is easy to believe that anything could be lurking in that darkness. So you huddle closer to the fire. You pull your scratchy wool blanket up to your chin. You listen to the sounds of the night, your imagination running wild. You tell yourself it's just the wind. It's just the old stones settling. But a part of you is not so sure. Because in this world, the veil between the natural and the supernatural is very thin, and the night is when that veil is at its most transparent. You close your eyes and pray for the dawn, for the return of the sun, which will chase the shadows away, at least for a little while. Let's imagine you fall ill. There is no doctor to call. There is no pharmacy to visit. You are at the mercy of medieval medicine, a terrifying blend of folk remedies, religious belief, and flawed scientific theory. The foundation of medicine is the theory of the four humours: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Health is the balance of these four fluids in the body. Sickness is caused by an imbalance. So, if you have a fever, it is believed you have an excess of blood. The treatment is obvious. The castle's barber surgeon will come to your bedside. He is the same man who cuts the lord's hair and pulls rotten teeth. He will open a vein with a phlegm or apply leeches to your skin. You will be bled until you are pale and faint. The idea is to remove the excess humor and restore balance. In reality, it just weakens you further, making you more vulnerable to the actual disease. If you have a headache, it might be seen as a build-up of pressure in the skull. A procedure called trepanning, drilling a hole in the skull, might be considered. This is an extreme and incredibly dangerous measure, but it was practiced. Herbal remedies are the most common form of treatment. The lady of the castle or a local wise woman will have extensive knowledge of herbs. A poultice of comfrey for a broken bone, a tea of willowbark for a fever, a salve of yarrow to stop bleeding. Some of these remedies are effective. Others are based on superstition or the doctrine of signature, the belief that a plant's appearance indicates its use. For example, The lungwort plant, with its spotted leaves that resembled diseased lungs, was used to treat respiratory ailments. Prayer is also a key part of the healing process. The chaplain will be summoned to pray at your bedside. Holy relics might be brought into the room. Sickness is often seen as a punishment for sin, so confession and penance are considered essential for recovery. Surgery is a last resort and is brutal. There is no anesthesia, other than a shot of strong alcohol or a tap on the head with a mallet. There is no understanding of germs or antiseptic practices. Surgical tools are wiped clean, but not sterilized. Infection is almost guaranteed. A simple wound can easily become fatal. A toothache is a common misery. The barber surgeon will pull the tooth with a pair of pliers, without any anesthetic. The pain is unimaginable. Mental illness is not understood at all. It is seen as a sign of demonic possession or a moral failing. The afflicted might be chained up, prayed over, or subjected to exorcisms. Childbirth, as we've seen, is incredibly dangerous for both mother and child. Puerperal fever, or childbed fever, is a common and deadly infection after birth. Given this state of affairs, it is no wonder that life expectancy is so low. People are generally tough and resilient, but a simple infection, a broken bone, or a bout of dysentery can be a death sentence. You live with a constant awareness of your own fragility, so you place your trust in a combination of herbs, prayers, and luck. You chew on a clove to soothe a toothache. You wrap a wound with clean linen and a spider's web, hoping it will heal. You drink bitter herbal teas, hoping to sweat out a fever, and you pray. You pray to God and the saints for deliverance, because, in the end, that is all you have. You are a fragile body in a harsh world, and survival is a matter of faith, fortune, and a strong constitution. The castle does not exist in a vacuum. Its rhythm is tied to the land. The turning of the seasons dictates the flow of life. Let's begin with the rebirth of the world in spring. After the long, cold, hungry months of winter, spring is a time of frantic activity. The fields must be plowed and planted. Everyone who is able to work is sent out from the castle and the village. The Lord himself might ceremonially plow the first furrow, a symbolic gesture to bless the new planting season. The air is full of the smell of turned earth and the shouts of the plowmen. Inside the castle, it's time for the great spring cleaning. The old, dirty rushes are swept from the floors. The tapestries are taken outside and beaten to get the dust and vermin out. Everything is aired out. A desperate attempt to banish the damp, stale smell of winter. Summer arrives, a time of growth and warmth. The days are long, providing more hours for work, and even a little leisure. The hay must be mown in the meadows, a crucial source of winter feed for the animals. The Lord and his knights might go on a hunt, a combination of sport and stocking the larder. The ladies of the castle will spend time in the gardens, tending to the herbs, vegetables, and flowers. It's a rare chance to be outside in the sunshine. Feasts are more common in the summer. There is more fresh food available. Vegetables from the garden, fish from the river. But summer also brings its own problems. The heat can be oppressive within the stone walls. The smell from the moat and the middens gets worse. Flies are a constant nuisance, and the risk of food spoiling is much higher. Then comes autumn, the most critical season of all. This is the time of the harvest. The success or failure of the harvest determines who will eat and who will starve over the winter. Every available hand is needed in the fields to bring in the grain. It is a race against time and the changing weather. Once the grain is harvested, there is a flurry of activity, threshing to separate the grain from the chaff, milling the grain into flour. The castle's larders are filled with sacks of flour, salted meat, dried beans, and barrels of ale. The harvest festival is a time of great celebration and relief. A huge feast is held for everyone, a reward for their hard work, but it is a brief respite, because winter is coming. Winter in the castle is a time of hunkering down and enduring. The world outside is cold, grey, and often covered in snow. Travel is difficult and dangerous. The castle becomes an isolated island in a sea of white. Life moves indoors. The great hall becomes the center of all activity. The fire is kept burning day and night. Food is monotonous, relying on the preserved stores from the autumn. Boredom, as we've seen, is a major challenge. But winter is also a time for indoor work. Weaving cloth, mending tools, telling stories. The Christmas season provides a welcome break in the gloom. A time of feasting, games, and religious celebration. But after the 12 days of Christmas, the long, hard stretch of late winter still lies ahead. By February, supplies may be running low. People are weary of the cold, the darkness, and each other. This is often the cruelest time of the year. Then, one day, you feel a subtle shift in the air. The light lasts a little longer in the afternoon. You hear the first song of a returning bird, and you see the first green shoots pushing up through the cold earth. Spring is returning. The cycle begins again. This annual rhythm is the true heartbeat of castle life, a constant dance of labor, celebration, and survival, tied to the earth, the sun, and the inexorable turning of the seasons. The castle is a magnet for travelers. It is a center of power, a place of refuge, and a hub of activity, so you are never surprised to hear the watchman's horn announcing a visitor at the gate. But who could it be? The arrival of a stranger is always a moment of anticipation and anxiety. Perhaps it is a wandering minstrel, his lute slung over his back. He is a welcome sight, a bearer of news, songs, and stories from the outside world. He will be given a place by the fire and a good meal. In exchange, he will entertain the castle's inhabitants for a few days. His songs of heroic knights and tragic lovers are a balm for the bored soul. His gossip from other courts is even more valuable. Or perhaps it is a merchant leading a train of pack mules. He brings with him the treasures of the world. Spices from the East, silks from Italy, wine from France. His arrival causes a stir of excitement. The lady of the castle will come to inspect his wares. The lord will negotiate for wine and other luxuries. The merchant is treated with respect, for he is a source of both goods and news. But he is also watched with suspicion, for all merchants are suspected of sharp dealing. Maybe it is a pilgrim on his way to a holy shrine. He is gaunt and dusty from his travels, his staff in his hand. He will be given a simple meal and a place to sleep in the stables, or an out. Hospitality to pilgrims is a Christian duty, and it is believed to bring blessings upon the household. The pilgrim will repay their kindness with stories of his journey and prayers for his hosts. Perhaps it is a messenger, his horse lathered in sweat. He carries a sealed letter from another lord or from the king himself. His arrival creates immediate tension. The letter could contain anything: a summons to war, news of a death, a demand for taxes. The lord will break the wax seal with a sense of dread. The messenger will be given food and a fresh horse, and sent on his way as quickly as possible. He is a harbinger, and no one likes to linger in the presence of potentially bad news. Worst of all, it could be a friar, or a... The friar will preach a fiery sermon in the courtyard, denouncing the sins of the world and calling for repentance. The pardoner will offer to sell you indulgences, slips of paper that promise to reduce your time in purgatory. He may also have a bag of fake holy relics, a pig's bone that he claims is from a saint, a piece of cloth that he says is from the Virgin Mary's veil. The chaplain views these men with deep suspicion and professional jealousy, but many of the common folk, desperate for salvation, will eagerly buy what they are selling. And sometimes the visitor is just a distant cousin, who has fallen on hard times and is seeking the charity of his kin. This is perhaps the most awkward arrival of all. You are bound by blood to help him, but you know that, like the other guests we've discussed, he may never leave. Each visitor brings a piece of the outside world into the closed environment of the castle. They disrupt the daily routine. They bring new ideas, new stories, new anxieties. They must be fed, housed, and dealt with. Dealing with these strangers is a key skill for the lord and lady of the castle. It requires diplomacy, generosity, and a healthy dose of suspicion. You must be a gracious host, but also a shrewd judge of character, because any stranger could be a friend or a foe, a source of profit or a source of trouble, a saint or a spy. So you watch, you listen, and you wait, and you wonder what news the next blast of the watchman's horn will bring. Let us descend from the great hall and the solar, down a steep, narrow flight of stairs, into the belly of the beast. Welcome to the castle kitchens. This is the fiery, chaotic, and vital heart of the entire establishment. The kitchens are a separate building, or located in the basement of the keep. This is a safety measure, to keep a kitchen fire from spreading to the rest of the castle. The first thing that hits you is the heat. The great hearths are burning day and night, roaring like dragons. The air is thick with smoke, steam, and 100 different smells. The smell of roasting meat, baking bread, simmering vegetables, and unfortunately, burning food. The head cook is the undisputed king of this domain. He is a temperamental, often tyrannical figure. Wielding his long-handled spoons and ladles like a scepter, he commands a small army of kitchen staff. Scullery maids, who scrub pots and wash vegetables, turnspit boys, who endure the hellish heat to slowly rotate the roasting meats, bakers who need endless mounds of dough in the bakehouse. The noise is deafening, the clang of pots and pans, the chop-chop-chop of knives on wooden blocks, the sizzle of fat hitting the fire, the bubbling of cauldrons, and above it all, the constant shouting of the cook. The logistics of feeding a castle household are staggering. Everything must be done on a massive scale. Bread is baked in dozens of loaves at a time. Ale is brewed in huge vats. Entire animals, pigs, sheep, deer, are butchered and cooked. There is no precise measurement. Cooking is done by instinct, experience, and guesswork. The cook adds ingredients by the handful. He judges the temperature of the oven by putting his hand in it. Hygiene is, by our standards, appalling. The floors are covered in grease and spilled food. Dogs and cats wander in and out, looking for scraps. Flies swarm everywhere. The cooks and their assistants are sweating profusely in the intense heat, but from this chaos emerges the food that sustains the castle. The bland, daily portage for the servants, the multi-course meals for the lord's table, and the spectacular creations for a great feast. A feast is when the kitchen staff truly shows their skill. They create subtleties, elaborate, edible sculptures, a marzipan castle, a jellied peacock with its feathers reared, a pie from which live birds fly out when it is cut. These are as much theatre as they are food, designed to impress and amaze the guests. The cellars below the kitchen are a cool, dark refuge. Here are stored the barrels of wine and ale, the sacks of flour and oats, the wheels of cheese and tubs of salted butter. The cellarer is in charge of these vital supplies. His job is to ensure they are not stolen or spoiled. And then there are the dungeons. They are not always the dramatic torture chambers of legend. Often They are just secure storerooms in the basement. But they can be used as prisons when needed. A captured enemy, a rebellious peasant, a disgraced knight, they would be thrown into one of these cold, dark, windowless rooms, left with a little bread and water, and their own fear. It is a grim and terrifying fate. This underworld of the castle, the kitchens, the cellars, the dungeons, is hidden from view. The nobles in the great hall do not see the sweat and labor that produces their meals. They do not think about the vast stores of supplies that sustain their lifestyle, and they try not to think about the darkness that lies beneath their feet. But this underworld is the true foundation of the castle. Without the fire of the kitchens and the bounty of the cellars, the grandeur of the great hall would be impossible. It is a world of hard, hot, essential labor, the engined room of the great stone ship. In the end, what is the legacy of a castle? It is more than just a pile of stones. It is a testament to human ambition, fear, and endurance. Think of the person who laid the first stone, the master mason who designed its interlocking defenses, the generations of laborers who quarried the stone, hauled it, and set it in place. They built something designed to last for centuries, something that would outlive them, their children, and their children's children. The castle is a vessel of memory. The walls have witnessed births and deaths, feasts and sieges, moments of joy and of terror. If these stones could talk, what tales they would tell! Of secret alliances forged in the solar, of desperate battles fought on the ramparts, of quiet tears shed in a lonely bedchamber. It is a symbol of a brutal and hierarchical society. It is a physical manifestation of the gap between the powerful and the powerless. The high walls separate the lord from the peasant. The thick stone protects the noble family while the villagers live in wooden hovels. It is a constant reminder of who is in charge, but it is also a symbol of community and interdependence. The castle cannot function without the labor of the servants, the skill of the craftsmen, the courage of the soldiers, and the produce of the peasants. It is a complex ecosystem, where everyone has a role to play, a fragile balance of duty, loyalty, and resentment. Over time, the castle changes. New towers are added, old walls are rebuilt, fashions in fortification change. The advent of gunpowder and cannons will eventually render these stone walls obsolete. The world will move on. The castle will fall into ruin. Its roofs will collapse. Its timbers will rot. Ivy will crawl over its walls. It will become a home for birds and bats. A romantic, picturesque ruin on a hilltop. People will visit it and marvel at its strength and beauty. They will try to imagine what life was like for the people who lived here. They will imagine kings and queens, knights in shining armor, and elegant ladies. They will not imagine the cold, the dirt, the boredom, the fear. They will not imagine the servant with chapped hands, or the soldier with a festering wound, or the child dying of a fever. But that is the true story of the castle. It is not a fairy tale. It is a story of human beings, living, loving, fighting, and dying in a harsh and difficult world. It is a story of survival. So, as you finally drift off to sleep in your imaginary stone bedchamber, listen closely. You can almost hear the echoes of the past, the clang of the blacksmith's hammer, the laughter of children in the courtyard, the whisper of a prayer in the chapel, the lonely call of the watchman on the walls. All's well. You are a part of this story now. You have walked its halls, felt its cold, and breathed its smoky air. You have tasted its bland food and endured its endless noise. You have witnessed its moments of drama and its long stretches of monotony. You have lived, for a short while, within its unyielding stone embrace. And perhaps you have come to understand that the true castle is not the one made of stone and mortar. It is the one we build in our minds. a fortress of memory, a stronghold of stories, a place where the past is always present, and where the echoes of history never truly fade away. Sleep now. The watch is set. The gates are barred. For tonight, at least, all is well.